Mangroves, marshlands, and swamps are highly effective at storing carbon in waterlogged soil. These ecosystems accumulate large amounts of organic material over time, locking carbon away in deep layers of mud. My next guest understands the value of nature. Here's my conversation with Ralph Chami. Hey, Ralph.
Hello. Good to see you.
Yeah.
I met Chami at our offices in Washington, D.C.
Ralph, why don't we start with the word epiphany, because you had an epiphany and it kind of changed the direction of your life, right?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Well, if I were to point to the main one, 2017, for whatever reason, I ended up on a boat with mostly strangers in the Sea of Cortez who were tracking and following the great whales, in particular the blue whale. So I'm sitting there thinking, what did I sign up here to do? Really, why am I here? And I hadn't finished my thought. And out of nowhere, this creature comes out of the water. My colleagues then said, who became my colleagues, they were strangers, but they said that my mouth was wide open. I wasn't saying anything because almost 110-foot creature
Wow.
comes out of the water. And of course, I was raised by the Jesuits. And so the first thing comes to mind, Jonah's story is true, except that he had a happy ending. It's not so sure in my case.
No, I think you're on the path.
Yeah. Well, that's now, but then I wasn't so sure. Literally, I mean, you have to understand what a blue whale is. You can fit an African elephant in her mouth. So it's not just the length, it's the volume. And I could not comprehend what I was seeing in front of me. So Jonah's story came to mind immediately, like this must be true because this thing can swallow all of us and without a trace, or she can do like this with her, with her fin and we're gone, except that there was no fear. Literally no fear. You know how sometimes you meet someone and you either like them or you fear them or you don't like them. This one was like this magnificent being rising out of nowhere and looking at you. And you're like, and then the next thing on my mind was, where have I been? That was the second. And that's when tears started rolling down because I was like, why am I here anyway?
And it changed the direction of your
everything.
life.
Everything changed.
That majestic being changed
everything.
Where you went.
Absolutely. 180 degrees. And there's Ralph before 2017, and there's Ralph post 2017.
It's almost like two lives.
It is two lives.
Yeah.
It is two lives.
Ralph Chami is the founder of Blue Green Future, an organization that provides policy advice on the economic value of nature. He holds a PhD in economics from Johns Hopkins University.
So here's a guy who's,
financial guy.
Yeah, the abacus, the finances. And now all of a sudden it's just like huge change.
Yeah.
It's not like a light switch you can turn on and off. There has to be a transition.
Yes.
Talk to me about that journey.
Sure. We go back to two houses where the group was living, and we're just chatting at dinner and having my third glass of wine, and I overhear a conversation about whale carbon. My background originally, before I became an economist, I was in sciences, so I know a bit about carbon. And I said, yeah, but we're all carbon units, so what? And one of them said, yeah, but do you think you have as much carbon on yourself as the great whale that you just observed? Obviously not. But how much carbon is on the whale? They said, well, why don't you go read a paper by Andy Pershing, 2010. They all went to sleep. I couldn't sleep. So I download on my iPad in my room the paper.
Your homework assignment.
Yes. And I love these. I love puzzles and stuff like that. Because I was intrigued, like, how much carbon dioxide is that? To go from carbon to carbon dioxide, the typical formula is you multiply by 11/3. And suddenly you're looking at 33 tons of carbon dioxide being kept out of the atmosphere because of this whale. And those whales are so heavy, when they die, they sink. And anything that sinks below 1,000 meters, even if it's suspended in water, as long as you don't tinker with it, it doesn't go back up into the atmosphere. So that carbon is being sequestered. And I was like a total shock. And they said, well, so you like puzzles? I said, yeah, well, okay. So what do whales eat? I said, I learned from you that whales eat krill, the great whales. They said, well, if the whale were to die, what would happen to the krill? Well, I thought, okay, so the predator dies, the prey thrives. Right? I said, well, of course, the krill would increase. They said, wrong. What we observed, what scientists observed, is when whales were killed, but when whaling was permitted, the volume of krill tanked.
Wow.
Exactly. That was my reaction. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If the predator is killed, the prey should thrive. They said, yeah, not in this case. It's documented. Solve the puzzle. So in my head, I was thinking, so imagine in your head a triangle. The base of the triangle is whale eats krill. I said, what does krill eat? And I'm quite quantitative. I like puzzles. So I was thinking there must be something missing from the equation. But I know enough about this to be able to guess. So I was trying to figure it out. And I said, so what does the whale eat? They said, well, what does the krill eat? I know the whales eat krill. So that's one side. They said the krill eats phytoplankton. So now you draw the two arms of the triangle. So I put phyto on my napkin. I had a napkin. I still have it, by the way, where I scribbled because I'm trying to figure it out. And what is so great about phyto? Phyto are microscopic organisms that do something incredible. They do photosynthesis. They grab carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and release oxygen. How much carbon dioxide? 37 gigatons per year.
Wow.
That's equivalent to about the work of 4 Amazon forests per year.
Wow.
That's why people say the lungs of the planet are in the ocean. So, okay, so the whales eat krill, krill eats phyto. Okay, so now I need to link the phyto to the whale. So I said, what does phyto eat? So the answer was, well, phyto needs iron, phosphorus, and nitrogen. Where would this come from? So I guessed that, well, if you have runoff of rivers into the ocean, minerals would come into the ocean. Movement of wind over land. Yes, but you're in Antarctica. No rivers into the water and no movement of wind over, it's all ice. That stumped me. That's when one of them said, that's the poop of the whale.
Oh.
The poop of the whale has the limiting factor, which is iron. That's why the poop of the whale is orange, almost reddish, because of the iron content in it. So these whales are very smart. They eat a lot of krill. The krill feeds on phyto. But because they eat so much krill, they poop a lot. And there's more phyto. There's more phyto, there's more krill, there's more food for the whale. And you get this virtuous cycle.
Now it all makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that means the whale is also helping the phyto grab more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by fertilizing. So the whale is like a fertilizer, acting as a fertilizer. Ocean engineers, some people refer to them as the ocean engineers.
So if you just look at the whale as one component, you don't look at the whole ecosystem, you don't even realize it's even more than what you described early on.
Absolutely. It's much more than carbon also. So the question that was in my mind at the time was, well, what is the contribution of a whale to carbon in general? Because I know it's on its body, and now it's fertilizing phyto. So can we get a number, a ballpark figure, as to how much carbon is the whale contributing in terms of sequestration directly on its body and indirectly through the fertilization of phyto? At that time, no one had really done all of that exercise. I mean, the scientists were interested in what interests them. Why was I interested in it? Because I was sitting at the IMF, and at the IMF, we're looking at the price of carbon. What would be the price of carbon that would change people's behavior so that they emit less carbon dioxide into the atmosphere? The industry would emit less, countries would emit less, humans would emit less carbon. So IMF was doing quite a bit of work. What is the optimum price of carbon that would change people's mindset? And of course, even my colleagues then, they were like, but why are you interested in this? I said, look, I work for the IMF and I provide economic services. They pay me a salary. They don't pay me a salary because I'm a great husband or a great father or a great citizen or brother or son. They pay me a salary just for providing a service. You have a whale. The whale is providing humanity a service, sequestering carbon. That service is valuable. How much should we pay the whale? That's a eureka moment, if you like.
Yeah.
And of course, they had never heard of that before. They're like, what? I said, the whale is providing a service far more valuable than what I'm providing as an economist. They're helping us fight climate change.
A comparable situation unfolded with the bison population in North America.
So I find what you're doing so interesting, and it's really helping people who are sitting on assets that don't really realize it. I mean, one example would be Native Americans. Tell that story.
So the Native Americans are engaged in what is called rewilding, bringing back the bison. And they're bringing back the bison for cultural reasons, for social reasons, and for health reasons. Because remember, their diet was also bison meat. But it turns out from the science that when you bring back the bison, you bring back the grass, the original grass. In fact, you see that where the bison is back, you see the tall grass is back. The seed that has been dormant for over 100 and some years recognized the original tenant of the land and came back with a vengeance.
Wow.
But when you bring back the grass, you bring back the soil. And when you have healthy soil, it does a lot of things, including sequesters carbon. So what we can do is we can calculate what is the delta in the carbon due to bringing back the bison. And if you take that delta and that whatever that carbon is due to the bringing back the bison, and you sell it, then this project will refinance itself. So you're selling the carbon credits, so the money comes back to the tribes to be able to buy land and increase the size of the herd.
So it's a win-win.
It's a win-win. It's a win-win for nature, because you make the original nature. It's win for its owner, for the stewards of nature, in this case the indigenous and the Native Americans. And it's also a win-win for the buyers of the carbon credits, who can now put on their website that they are investing in nature, they're investing in livelihoods, they're enhancing employment, they're alleviating poverty, they're enhancing food security. How wonderful is that? You get the three wins. There's these microscopic organisms called phytoplankton. Those phytoplankton do something really incredible. They grab so much carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and they return oxygen to all of us.
And I watched your TED Talk, If Nature Could Speak, If Humans Could Listen, which is really two different dynamics. And basically humans aren't listening. Nature's trying to get through to us. You're that conduit in a sense.
Correct. So if I were to put it, you have two systems. You have nature and you have markets. At best, they've treated each other with ambivalence, to the detriment of both. When nature and people concerned with nature, and many people, their careers are protection of nature, never paid attention. I come from the markets. I did not grow up as an environmentalist at all. I was not aware of any of this. So by not engaging us in that conversation, the markets understood that nature is invisible. So now you have two systems. You have the nature system is indifferent to the markets. People in the conservation world never understood what the markets are interested in. So the markets know only one part of nature, which is the extractive side.
Right.
So the markets descended on nature, destroying nature and its biodiversity, which boomeranged back to us in climate change. Climate change is a result of the destruction and the distress of nature. Think about it. The fires in Los Angeles. People say climate, but climate is not on fire. Nature is on fire.
Right, right.
When we had the floods in North Carolina, it's water, it's rivers. So it's nature that is being stressed, coming back to us in what we call climate change, you see? So we need to rectify that relationship with nature.
But seeing it through the lens of, you're looking at nature from the standpoint of, this is an asset. This is This is a key asset. You're looking at it from a financial lens,
Yeah.
which is able to communicate to market-driven people in a
Yes.
different way.
Yes, because I tell my own guild, right? I'm guilty. I come from that world, right? I say we know very well how to price the provisioning side of nature. Nature as a resource. Nature, we can price corn, wheat, apples, oranges, gas, oil, minerals. But what is the value of nature living for itself? There's a tree here, right outside your window, right? That's not a fruit tree. If I tell anybody walking on the street, what is the value of that tree? You know what they'll think? Timber.
Yeah.
That's the extractive view. Turns out that tree living for itself sequesters carbon. That tree just by itself, not even aware of your existence and mine, living for herself, is sequestering carbon. We can now value that service. We did the same thing with the elephants. When we did the whale work, the scientists from Paris called us up who had discovered that the forest elephants, not the savanna elephants, in the Congo basin, amazing. They walk around, they have same taste buds as you and me, and they like to eat plants that are low in fiber, high in protein. But they don't like to eat plants that are high in fiber, which means high in carbon. So they leave old plants, old growth alone. And then as they walk around the forest, they traipse on small shoots, giving more space to older trees, which grow bigger and sequester more carbon. Those elephants also eat certain fruits that the seeds is so big, no other animal can eat it and, defecate it except them. So they fertilize the forest. So what they calculated is those elephants frolicking freely in nature as they were meant to, enhance carbon in the forest by 14%. That's their science. That's not me. That's not our work. But they called us and they said, hey, you're valuing the services of whales. Can you help us draw attention, exactly as you guessed, to the other side of the market, the markets, the private sector, the average person on the street, to the value of the living elephant? And yeah, we said yes. So we published with these scientists articles in Proceedings National Academy of Sciences, in Nature Journal, saying one elephant frolicking freely in the forest, as nature meant it to be, captures carbon over her lifetime equivalent to $1.75 million per elephant. Now, why is that? Because those elephants are being poached for $30,000.
Huge imbalance.
Huge imbalance.
Yeah.
So science, you have to have the science. Science is telling you nature, the regulating side of nature, is valuable. What we are able to do is map that or translate that science into financial language that says, yes, that value approximately is it 2 million or 3 million? It doesn't matter, but it's not zero. And it's certainly greater than a dead whale, which fetches $40,000 in countries that still eat whale meat. There are very few of them. Fetches $40,000. But a living whale, moving in the oceans.
The Amazon's flying rivers, moisture-laden air currents are vital to Latin America's water cycle and biodiversity. But deforestation and climate change are threatening them. Viewing these rivers as natural infrastructure opens the door to financial tools that support their protection.
Let me finish by asking this question. You go, you see this magnificent creature, it sends you on this direction that you never thought possible. What's been the impact so far? And I know when it comes to something like climate, it seems like it's an oncoming train and it's moving rather fast and you're standing on the tracks. You want to stop it, but it seems like it's like pushing the rock up the hill. Where do you see things today and where would you like to see them?
Yes, so we are in the 11th hour. Make no mistake. But it's a self-inflicted predicament. And I think just as we got ourselves into it, we can get ourselves out of it. And so our approach is to engage everyone. Nature needs to be saved. Philanthropic money is woefully short. Government money is woefully short. The gap, according to estimates, not mine, in the market, is $800 billion per year. Okay, so we have exhausted philanthropy and charitable giving. We exhausted government because governments are distracted. Whose sector is sitting on trillions of dollars who can move very quickly if engaged? The private sector. I am focusing, and my colleague, we focus our attention on the private sector. Our approach is you have a stake in the protection and restoration of nature. Not nature as risk to your balance sheet, but nature as an opportunity. And we're doing it in the Bahamas. We're basically saying, if you come into the Bahamas, and we work in many other places, okay? If you come and you buy those nature credits, you will make money. Nature thrives. And the country that owns the asset will find that its asset is looked after in perpetuity. And you cannot look after the asset in perpetuity if you don't look after the people in perpetuity. The people, the stewards of nature, are engaged. They're in the driver's seat, not as recipients of a benefit. No one wants a handout. So our three principles of this work: the asset is never sold. The money has to come back to look after the asset in perpetuity, because it's only when the asset is alive and well and doing well and living for itself. Please, I'd like to underscore that. That's what's new about this work. Nature living for itself is a new asset class.
But it's a paradigm shift in how
Yes,
you look at
exactly. It needs a shift in the mindset. Before action, you have to change people's mindset. Remember when smoking was allowed, people, smoked in cars and this and that, and then there was a shift in the mindset, and then you saw the action. But we're in the 11th hour. My mom used to always say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Right? Start now, perfect later. We know enough to start. In fact, we should have started yesterday. I am focusing most of my attention and my colleagues' attention on engaging the private sector to see that they have something in the protection and restoration of nature. Once they see that, trillions will come into that space. Because you're absolutely right, it's a train coming at us at a faster and faster speed.
So Wall Street's all about bull markets and bear markets, but you've got them thinking about whales and elephants, which is exactly what we need. Ralph, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving nature a podium.